They say the most dangerous mistake in business isn't missing a deadline or misreading a report. It's underestimating the quiet ones, the ones who know every system, every flaw, every hidden dependency, and wait for the exact right moment. I know this sound intimately. I am the kind of person who operates in silence, but whose absence can bring a company to its knees. My name is Elena Mora, and until 2 months ago, I was the Chief Operations Officer at Aurora Dynamics, a mid-sized energy tech company quietly revolutionizing solar storage solutions. I didn't write press releases or give keynote speeches, but every project, every partnership, every launch had passed through my hands. My unofficial title was the woman who keeps impossible operations from imploding. Then came Clara Winslow, the new CEO, with her curated smile, executive photos, and a LinkedIn profile that could make consultants weep. She didn't know me, but she immediately understood my influence, the kind that could make or break a merger with a single strategic question or an email that never arrived. The trouble began the day she announced the restructuring. Entire divisions would be merged, eliminated, or reassigned. When I opened the email from her assistant, I saw the words I'd feared but never imagined. Your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. Please hand over all access and exit within the hour. I stared at the screen. The hum of the servers in the background seemed louder, almost mocking. 12 years of work, quietly building the operational backbone of Aurora Dynamics, reduced to a time-stamped notification. I didn't react. I closed the laptop, grabbed my personal folder, a folder that contained copies of everything, from regulatory filings to system backdoors and audit logs no one else could touch, and left. Walking out, I passed security, the receptionist, even the night janitor who'd never known my name. Every step I took was deliberate. I wasn't running, I was planning. I didn't need to confront Clara directly. Soon enough, she would learn that some quiet people are far more dangerous than loud ones. 2 weeks later, I sat in a small cafe tucked between abandoned warehouses and repurposed lofts in the industrial district. The sunlight hit the chipped brick walls just right. I sipped a cappuccino and sketched diagrams, noting every operational vulnerability that could turn the company's impressive front-facing dashboards into chaos. Aurora Dynamics had grown too dependent on me. Every automated workflow, every licensing agreement, every deployment of solar grids I'd overseen was flawless, until I introduced the tiniest, perfectly calculated irregularity. The merger with Solvexa Energy, valued at $1.2 billion, was scheduled for next week. Clara had proudly secured it without consulting me. She didn't understand the fragility hidden beneath the polished spreadsheets. She didn't understand how an overlooked certification, a single missing safety document, or a misfiled contract could bring the entire deal to a halt. I started quietly reaching out to former board members, regulatory advisors, and trusted consultants under pseudonyms. I left subtle hints about incomplete filings, safety oversights, and operational gaps. The trick was precision, not drama. One wrong move and the plan could unravel. But patience was my ally. I had 12 years of training in making invisible systems obey my timeline. Meanwhile, Clara's executive team basked in the illusion of control. Dashboards glowed green, charts ascended, and investors felt reassured. They didn't see what I had left hidden, a network of dependencies, safety reports, and licensing steps that would respond exactly when I wanted them to. I revisited the operational manuals I'd written, the internal memos no one had archived properly, and the encrypted backups of all Solvexa integration templates. Every line, every paragraph, every spreadsheet contained small, imperceptible triggers. By the time the first investor meeting began, the facade of stability would hold, but the core was already brittle. I leaned back in my chair, letting the warm sunlight hit my face. Clara didn't yet know me. She didn't know that the quiet COO she dismissed was capable of holding $1 billion acquisition hostage without anyone realizing it. She didn't know that when the silence fell over the boardroom, it would be my hand that pulled the air from the room. And when it did, everyone would learn the sound of real failure, the sound that hits harder than screaming, harder than sirens, harder than the click of a closing deal turning into an implosion. I smiled and finished my cappuccino. Patience, timing, precision. That was all it took. The day the Solvexa board meeting began, I was already several moves ahead. I wasn't there physically, of course. Clara would never suspect I was observing the chaos from afar, but I had eyes on every critical system. I had reintroduced subtle anomalies into the project management dashboards. A misdated safety report here, a missing signature there, an automated alert that would trigger only under specific circumstances. The kind of invisible dominoes that, once tipped, would bring a mountain down without anyone hearing it coming. I had spent hours crafting emails under pseudonyms, reaching out to regulatory consultants and former auditors who owed me small favors. Each message hinted at potential non-compliance, phrased in carefully neutral language. Not a threat, just a suggestion that someone review the files thoroughly. Each suggestion would eventually reach Clara's inbox indirectly, feeding her anxiety in small doses. I wanted her to feel control slipping before she realized the floor beneath her had vanished. Meanwhile, inside Aurora Dynamics, the office was buzzing with pre-meeting energy. Clara strode through the halls, her new title embroidered on her jacket. Her confident smile meant to hide the panic I knew she would feel in a few hours. Her assistants carried stacks of reports. Her finance team ran last-minute projections. None of them suspected that the foundations of their work were already compromised. By mid-morning, my planted irregularities began to ripple outward. A safety compliance alert that should have been minor escalated automatically. A key licensing document that had been filed digitally was missing its notarized copy. Solvexa's legal team sent an urgent inquiry, but the system I had left in place delayed the forwarding to Aurora Dynamics' compliance office. Every minute added pressure. Every delayed response amplified the tension. Clara tried to stay ahead. She convened emergency huddles, reassigned teams, and instructed her executives to double-check every file. But she underestimated the complexity I had woven into the system over 12 years. Every dashboard she relied on was subtly misreporting. Green indicators where there should have been yellow, missing alerts where critical flags existed. It wasn't visible yet, but the room for error was closing fast. By lunchtime, whispers had started to circulate among the executives. Did the compliance team see this? I can't find the notarized report. Who approved the deployment schedule? Anxiety spread like wildfire, infecting every department. I watched remotely, sipping another cappuccino in the same quiet cafe, my notebook filled with diagrams showing exactly how the discrepancies would converge. The tipping point came when Solvexa's CEO called for a live system review. They wanted real-time dashboards, expecting flawless integration reports. What they got instead was chaos in motion. Alerts cascaded, documents flagged for missing approvals, automated checks failed in sequence. The $1.2 billion merger, once a celebrated headline, began to unravel in front of every board member's eyes. And then Clara called my name. Not me directly, of course. She didn't know my presence, but she mentioned my role in internal operations as she tried to assign blame to someone. Her tone was defensive, almost frantic. She had no idea that the quiet COO she had dismissed was the architect of her current nightmare. Every misplaced file, every delayed alert, every procedural anomaly had been set by me long before she even considered firing me. Investors on the conference call started asking questions. Is this really compliant? How did this go unnoticed until now? Are all regulatory approvals finalized? The questions were polite at first, then sharp, urgent, demanding. Clara stammered through answers, pointing fingers at subordinates, trying to deflect blame. But the cracks were too deep. The structure I had left in place was not only fragile, it was about to collapse completely. By mid-afternoon, Solvexa stock had dropped 18%, and the media was starting to pick up on delays and operational failures. Press releases that had been scheduled for the merger were postponed indefinitely. Executives scurried to reconcile reports, to reassure investors, to salvage what little confidence remained. But the truth was unavoidable. The entire system depended on someone who was no longer present. I leaned back in my chair, letting the sunlight wash over me. It wasn't joy. It wasn't gloating. It was satisfaction in knowing that precision, patience, and planning had won. I hadn't needed confrontation. I hadn't needed to scream or send angry emails. I had relied on what I always relied on: understanding systems, understanding people, and knowing exactly when to remove my hands from the controls. Clara would eventually realize, in the quiet aftermath, who had orchestrated this. She would feel the weight of every decision she had made without consulting,